Welcome to my shop here in Mount Uniacke. My name is Gregg, 72 years old, retired. I have an interest in hot rods, old cars, basically anything that's metal. It goes back to when bought my first car when I was 15. Led into a long career of automobiles. Went to trade school in 1966. NSIT in Halifax was a really good experience. Had two excellent old teachers. They were old school, pick and file, lead work, hammer work with dollies and hammers that I don't know I would have learned anywhere else from anybody any better, and carried it through most of my life. I still use some of the same techniques. I worked with a lot of fellows after that I went to school with that end up running some of the shops I worked for, which was Bob McDonald's Chevrolet, Ford Chev and Olds, Fairley and Stevens, Dartmouth Dodge. Back then we were working on what are now the old classics. That would have been 1967, 68, 69s, the GTOs, the Firebirds, the Sunbirds, whatever was out there in a hot rod today. It was just a common car being driven back in the day. It was just, we saw them every day, the Novas and so on. But anyway, I continued on, had a few of my own shops, and I still have the interest in the hobby. It's something that just doesn't go away. You're an avid collector of everything related to cars and tools. You can't have too many tools, and it's so much easier. What I'm trying to do is put the interest out there to some of the younger generation that's maybe has an old Honda or something, or Toyota that they'd like to work on. They feel they don't have the experience level or whatever. Just start, read a book, get online, do some research, try to save a little bit of money, buy a few rudimentary tools. They don't have to be from Snap-on. And watch. There's a lot of good videos out there on metal work and mechanical work and so on. And if you're hooked in that, if you're hooked in the industry in terms of the hot rods and so on, you'll have it your whole life, and it's a good hobby. It's expensive, but it's a good hobby. But what I'm trying to do is save you a bit of money. You can do a lot of this stuff yourself. You don't have to go to that shop down the road that's $60, $70, $80 to have that patch put in your floor, or quarter panel, repaired on your car, or whatever. Put a windshield in. It's all doable. You can do it. So for the young people that are out there today, it's a lot different getting involved in the trade in terms of buying the tools and equipment. They weren't available when I was first started in this. You worked for a dealer. They supplied all the big stuff, the frame machines and all that. Well, today that stuff's all accessible. You can buy hoists, something that you could, compressors. You can pick them up anywhere. Back in the day, you couldn't buy them anywhere. Now with their Canadian Tire, you can go pick up most of the tools you need to start to do, the little dollies and hammers. They're not the best, but it's a start. And you can, by buying these tools, you can get the confidence level to get in and do that little repair on that fender. You want to attempt to flare quarter pounds on your little old car or something. You want to put fatter tires in the back. It's all doable. You just have to research it a bit and take the steps and get it done. And it's nice to have a few friends in the trade that to help you out, which I like to be. I can help you through some of the stuff. You can send me a text or whatever. You're into a certain project or something. You don't have to be in my backyard. I can text you off and give you some advice on what to do. And as far as the tools go, Prince's Auto today, you can buy just about anything you need to rebuild a car. Shrinkers, stretchers, hammers, dollies, spray equipment. It's an endless amount of tools they have, and they're not super expensive. They're expensive, but as time goes on, you treat yourself. You buy a paint gun, and then you buy another gun for your primer, and then you buy, you save your money up, and somebody says, well, what am I going to get you for Christmas? Buy me a little brake, which is for bending metal, or buy me a shrinker stretcher. You can buy one with a double set of heads, or instead of changing heads over, I just bought two. One's for one bend, and one's for the other bend. I don't have to switch back and forth. But it took me a while to get to that point. To build a shop today, it's not a cheap endeavor, but if Dad's got a little garage in the backyard you can use, then hopefully you can squeeze him out and move your stuff in. But it's a good hobby. I've got a couple projects on the go right. I've always got projects on the go. I'm building a 28 Chev here to my right that I bought from my brother a few years ago. One he put off their side. He sold his stuff off, and I'm rebuilding this. It was in a box when I got it. Basically, it was all in pieces. There wasn't a nut or a bolt fastened into it. It was all full of wood. All the interior door panels and all that's all done in wood. And I took the time to take all the wood out, and as I was taking the wood out, I couldn't bring myself to throw it all away. The way it was designed and built back in the day, whoever did it, there's a car that's almost 100 years old. But it rattled. It was actually nailed together. The metal was nailed to the wood structure in the door frames. Once I cut the door apart, there was nothing left but a door skin. So reframed it all, and I planned on putting power windows in it, so I had to allow the depth of the door was a little more than what the original door was. So it takes a bit of time to plan that out, and there was some trial and error to get it that way. And I put it together and fit the window. And if you find that, okay, geez, I made a mistake, then you know what? You go back, you got the tools, you cut it apart and do it again. Make it right. Don't do something and say, oh, that's good enough. If you're not happy with it, chances are down the road you're not going to be any happier. So fix it now. You got it in the shop, you got it tore apart, get it done. Make it happen. Let me elaborate a little bit on the door structure of the vehicles, and these vehicles in general had a lot of wood, Ford and Chev both. A lot of them did back in the day. This one's a 1928, and when I went to do the repair of the doors, which there wasn't a lot of metal repair to do, found out there's a lot of wood in them, which I didn't realize there was so much wood, but they're all wood. And the window regulators were actually fastened to wood frame. They're all dadoed out, and somebody went through a lot of time. They must have had jigs to be like somebody built a set of kitchen cabinets, like the woodwork that you would have had to do. They would have had carpenters on site to build this stuff. And it was all dadoed out and finger jointed, and it was all done in oak. But I didn't have the heart to throw it out. I kept it all. Somebody may be restoring one back that they're going to put the wood back in. Well, these would be good templates for them. And you'll find that when you go through stuff later on in life when you're building stuff, that there's a lot of stuff you just can't throw out. I'm bad for that, but my shop shows it. I remember reading a book on Henry Ford, Louis Chevrolet, and all them back in the day. And one of the articles that I read on Henry Ford was, we were talking about the wood inside of the doors of the Chevrolet. Well, Ford also had them. And you can imagine when they were building them cars, millions of Ford Model A's and T's going out, all these wood panels that they were cutting inside, there was a lot of waste wood. There was literally piles of waste, little bits and pieces. And Henry Ford thought it seemed to be an awful waste of material. So he got together with some other people, chemists or whatever, and they actually come up with the recipe for modern day charcoal. And that's basically where it come from. Somebody may find this hard to believe, but just research it online. And I don't know the exact features of it all, but I remember that charcoal thing coming from Henry Ford. It was 28 version of recycling back in the day. Unbelievable. But getting back to the 28 Chev that I'm doing here, when I first brought this home, for those guys that are out there, it's easy to get overwhelmed if you're building a car. You look, I think, oh my, geez, I got to do this car. I got to do this to it and this to it. Take it one piece at a time. When I brought this car home on a trailer, literally in boxes, the fenders were off it. Like I say, no nuts and bolts together to it. It was all in pieces. I brought it in the shop and I mocked it all up to see what I had and what I didn't have. Make a list of what I needed. And then start picking away at it. Put the motor in. I had to build mounts because the frame had been boxed, but the mounts were never put back in. Mount the transmission mount. Rear end, make sure that's all centered up so when we hook up drive shafts and stuff, you're not binding up. And you go through that process and then put the front end together, put the fenders on, the back fenders on, so you got all your clearances for the wheels and what am I missing? And again, you're jotting this all down. I need to buy wheel nuts. I have to get this. I have to get brake parts. And you do a list. And you start cutting at that list every couple of weeks. You go and buy, you got a budget. You got 20 bucks or 25 bucks. Okay, I'm going to buy that rotor. You get the rotor. Don't need it right now. Later on down the road, you're going to need it. But if you get an extra 50 bucks, mom's getting you something for your birthday. Mom, I need rotors for my car. You know, just, and that's the way it goes. My wife gives me, they all give me cards now, either Canadian Tire or whatever, bank card for 50 bucks, because I can buy what I want. And usually it's for my car or one of my vehicles. I have another one on the other side, a 53 Chev that I've had way too long that hasn't gotten finished. Not that I'm not working at it. Again, I've got parts over there that I bought back probably 10 years ago. I brought back from Florida, all the front end stuff for it and all that. It was get it here, so when it's ready, I have it. I can put it together. It's money I spent back then. I don't have to slip into my wallet now and take it. I had a few extra bucks, maybe sold a car, picked up $1,000 or something, and that was my little treat to me. With building a car, it can be very overwhelming when you first look at it. If you've never done one before, myself, I've done them basically my whole life, going back to when I was doing collision work, repairing cars for the dealerships and so on. You'd get a car pulled into the shop, frame all bent on it, you had to put a roof on it, quarter panel, a door and a fender. Back in the day, you repaired a lot of stuff that today would be wrote off. There's no question about it, but we repaired a lot of vehicles. And I guess I got used to the idea that if I had a job that came in through the door was 50, 60 hours, it was a good job to me. I knew I was going to be there for at least that week, and we worked flat rates, so I made good money on them. But the time frame, when I look at them today, like these hot rods that I drag home, some people look at it. One fellow, as a matter of fact, was here the other week and said, "Why would you spend all that time on that car? How do you justify that?" And my answer to that is because I can. I enjoy doing it. But for the average Joe to look at that, it's so overwhelming. And again, one piece at a time. You know, go at it. This car, when I started, like I said, it was all in pieces when I brought it home. I tore the wood out of it. The wood and the regulators and stuff that were in the car, they weren't conducive to what I wanted to do, so I took it all out. I ended up putting power windows in it, which was an easy do because you can buy all the pieces so readily available online now. Amazon. Go on Amazon, research it. I think it was $190 for 2 regulators delivered to my door. Plug and play. You know, you got to brace them up a little bit, but they're user friendly. They're built. There's a straight up and down on these cars. Not like they got to come up and go back an inch before they seat into place. They're just straight up and down, and it makes for an easier build. And again, with this car, the fenders and so on were really good. Very minimal patchwork on this vehicle. 2 front quarter panels I had to patch, but when I got the wood out, the wood had caused some rot around the windshield. The pillars had to come out. The back fenders were same thing, basically no visible holes in them. They were just basically dents. Pick and filed, old school, pick and filed some dents out of them. Stripped them to bare metal on the outside and reprimed them up. Blocked them all out, which is block sanding, which we'll go through later on down the road of how to prep a fender or a door so it's, when you're done with it, it's smooth. This car is painted with spray bombs. Black lacquer because I don't know what color I want to paint it yet. And I thought, well, I'm gonna paint it because I want to drive it. So I went and I started looking around. You can't buy the old school black lacquer like you could be years ago by the quart because of lead bases and so on in the paint. So I went to Canadian Tire, done a little research on their spray bombs, and they're actually black lacquer. So I brought a couple home and I experiment with them. I ended up going through a few cans of it at 20 bucks a can, but I've got a paint job that cost me probably 450 bucks. So when I'm done, the car is black, it's painted, and if I decide I want to paint it blue, green, yellow, whatever, block sand that black, paint it whatever color I want. The car is ready for another paint job. So it just, I don't want to sit around with the bare primer on it. Primer is porous. Primer will suck up moisture that's in the air, even this newer stuff if it's sitting around. If I got to put this car out for a couple of days, do repairs on my car, my other when I'm driving, or my wife's car, this is going to have a cover on it, but still you're moving it out to the outside elements. So I want it sealed, and that's it. Some of the stuff that came with it, the headlights, bracket and so on, was all there. The red shroud, which had a few dents in it. I stripped all the paint off of them, and again, pick and filed a lot of stuff out of them that was in them. And the bracket that holds the headlights was damaged. I welded that up, cleaned it up, and they're just sprayed with spray chrome, basically. I mean, it's just to dress them up a little bit. The engine is a V6 out of an 85 Chev half-ton truck, which was, back in the day, they were I think 85 and 86. I could stand corrected on this. If somebody has a different opinion, they can send it to me. It's a V6 engine with a 4-barrel carburetor and headers from the factory. V6, it runs good. 3-speed transmission in it. Works great. That's the way it's going to stay. The radiator that's in it is an older radiator. I don't know that it would be an original core. It doesn't leak. It's in there, and I will probably put a new core in it. Right now, it's quite expensive. It's a $700-800 project to put that in. I'm going to run it as it is for now, just because I'm not planning on making long trips with it. It had a Mustang front end put under it back today, Mustang 2, and it had 4-bolt wheels on the front and 5-bolt 9-inch rear end in the back. So I done some research, wound up calling Horton Hot Rods in the States, and I bought a kit that came with the rotors, all the bearings, brake drums, whatever adapters I needed to fit that front end, so I could put 5-bolt forward wheels front and back, so I don't have to carry 2 spares if I'm going tripping somewhere. So that worked out really well. And a friend of mine had wheels. As it turned out, we got talking one day. He said, I got wheels up in the attic of my shop. Another guy like me, another hot rod collector. And he said, I'll sell them to you. And he sold it to me really right. You know, we do trade off. And that's what you'll find with the guys in the industry. Sometimes money's not an issue. It's just, if you need it, it's yours. We do it all the time. They're a great bunch to deal with, great bunch of guys. The tail end of the car, as you can see, has a different bumper. It's actually a front bumper off a 1953 Chev. I built a small Continental kit to carry the spare, because the spare tire, there's no place else to put it, and the battery is in front of it in that stainless steel box that I fabbed up there. And it's all bolt-on. It can all come off to do any, if you need to do any repairs or anything under there. When I was gathering up parts for the old car, I was online looking for parts and so on, and one day I happened to go on Marketplace, and I saw an ad on there for the gauge that you see sticking out of the top of the radiator, and it was locally, it was Wellington. So I called the guy and went over to look at it, and I went into a shop, and he total Ford guy. I think that was the only part in his shop that was Chevrolet. He wanted a firm dollar for it, and I never budged on it at all. I gave him what he wanted for it, but it turned out to be a really interesting conversation for the afternoon, and another hot rod buddy gained. Then he sold me a couple other little pieces that I needed for hold-down brackets for the hood that are Ford, but they will work on this, and he practically gave them to me. Like, we formed a relationship that quick, and he helped me out. There was no question about it. But it was neat to have that the only thing in his shop that was Chevrolet was that thermometer. I have a plate in the house. 1976, when Queen came to Canada, she was in Halifax. I have the plate off of her car, off of her limo, one of the license plates. How cool would that be on front of that car? Call it Queen. Dust off the old girl a little bit, give her a little rub down, make her feel wanted again. Let's go next door. We'll talk about my other project. I've got a 1953 Chev I bought a long time ago, and I've kind of neglected it for the last year or so to work on the 28, which I knew wouldn't take as long to put on the road as it's going to be on that one, on the 53 Bel Air. This one I'm going to enjoy driving while I'm working on the 53. It was quite an extensive project compared to this. Like, it's not a car that a lot of people would not take on. I ended up buying another car. I bought a Monte Carlo, or actually it's a G-body frame, and I lengthened it and put that under the 53 Chev, remounted all the gear for it, so now I've got newer style suspension under the car. It's got a small block V8 400 sitting over in the corner of my shop that's going. The body panels I got out of the United States, quarter panels, the bottoms and so on. You can build them all, but you can buy them. It's a lot easier to fab stuff up if you have the, they're not OEM panels, but they're real good fitting panels for the car. The doors are repairable, the fenders are repairable, all that stuff I can do, but the quarter panels were basically non-existent. They were toast. So I got the bottoms of the quarters and the floor pans, nothing in it. They were just gone rotten right out. So that's all been refabbed up. I'm in the process of doing the floor, or was in the process of doing the floor when this car came up, the 28. So that went on hold, but it's coming up this summer. I'll be back at the 53 Bel Air again. And I've gathered up a lot of stuff for it, as I've said earlier, about buying stuff for down the road when you're working on the car. But at a yard sale, went to a car show, swap meet, and there was some grill parts there. Well, I already had the grill parts, but I thought, maybe I'll grab a few more. Somewhere down the road, somebody might be looking for a trade-off. And the price was right on them. So when you see them, that first instinct to buy them, if the price is right, take them. Somewhere down the road, one of your buddies might need them, and you can do a little trade-off with them for something you do need. So the 53, I know it's pissed off with me because I left it alone in that bay for so long on its own, but I'm going to get back at it.